Welcome to Good Tech, an ongoing discussion around ethics and technology. I'm Elizabeth Perry with Idka. As a reminder, the show is recorded and will be available on Idka's YouTube channel, where you're probably watching it right now, or on ubngo.com/goodtech, and on iTunes, Spotify, or any other podcast channel you choose. If you're tuning in live today and have any questions or comments for myself or for our guests today, leave a comment on the Idka YouTube channel or dial the number on your screen, and we'll do our best to get you in on the conversation. So today we're talking about trust. We're hearing that buzzword quite a bit today, these days. On the one hand, studies are showing an extreme lack of trust in companies, in particular big tech. We all know who we're talking about. On the other hand, we're seeing an increase in companies out there who are going out of their way to build trust. What does it take to earn trust from our audience, from our customers, current and prospective? Today's guest has spent a good part of her career, quite a bit of time, talking and writing about data and ethics, and will help us tackle some of those questions around trust. Please welcome veteran journalist, author, speaker, and co-founder of DataEthics EU, Pernille Tranberg.
Hello.
Hi, Pernille. It's a pleasure to have you on today's show. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. So the word trust, right, tops the headlines today. Everybody's talking about it, mostly the lack of it. We're going to talk about how we got here, but we're also about how we as individuals and companies can tackle those issues around trust and maybe even help make the world a better place. But first, I want to talk about you. You have quite the background. You've done TED Talks, you've done 5 books and just a whole host of things. How did you get from being a journalist to data ethics? It's quite the journey. How did you get to the arena you are in today?
Well, my last job was with a big newspaper company where I tried to find new business models for them, looking at actually big tech. How did they do it? How did they make a lot of money? So I was looking at that, and I actually found a way, I believe, where I tried to tell them to kind of make an iTunes for news, because in Denmark we're only 5-point-something people, so we could actually make something like an iTunes for news. But the media business is much too competitive inside this little country I live in, so I gave up on them. And I also at that time did a book called Fake It, Your Online Identity is Worth Gold. Because while I was investigating all these companies and their business models, as a critical journalist, you know there is something on the other side. What do you actually pay with when something is free, right? So that's what that book was about. And that book started the career in privacy and data ethics. And that's in 2011 and 12.
So you're an investigative journalist then, because you take the time to really dig into this story. And, you know, I want to talk about that book, and I know you've written 5 of them, but that one stands out for me because of the title, first of all, Fake It, which I want to talk about. But also we talk about, you know, things like surveillance capitalism and things, you know, terminology that people are using today. Well, you wrote that book back in 2012, and that's before the term surveillance capitalism or any of those terms became watchwords, or, you know, Shoshana Zuboff, right, has made it famous, but it was around. So tell me, you know, what was that book about? Why the title Fake It?
Well, actually, it was 1 year before Edward Snowden's revelations came out. And when I
Mm.
made this book, some people actually called me crazy. God, she's crazy. She's recommending us to use a fake name on, for example, Facebook.
Uh-huh.
But I was very close with my colleague Stefan Hoyer, who co-wrote the book, who lived in Silicon Valley. And I've been living in the US, so I'm very used to reading really cool American newspapers and tech websites. So I was following the trend. And already back then, a lot of good news websites in the US were critical towards big tech in Silicon Valley. So we were just following that and reading that. And that's why we made the book. And because we knew what this was about, and because we actually read the Facebook terms of conditions, for example,
Right.
then if you read those back these days and understood them, then you'd never ever give your real data to a company like that, because they do tell what they're doing with data. It's just really, really hard to read it and understand it. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why I made up a fake name on Facebook. I have another name. I'm 10 years younger. I'm a lesbian. I live in Shanghai. I totally lie with all my data on Facebook. But what is really important is that my 450 friends, they all know it's me. I have found them myself, and I told them that I don't trust Facebook, so I have this alias or pseudonym or whatever, and that's totally legal. I mean, Facebook has a real name policy because they want real names because they can make more money on real names, but they have never stopped me, and I've been totally open about it for 12 years now. So I think it's okay, and I do believe that all kids, at least all kids under 13, they should use another name than their own. It's not 100% protection, of course, but it is some kind of protection because kids, they don't know how to be a public person. So, and I also believe that if you don't use Facebook as a professional, I would also fake it on Facebook. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
give my data to companies I trust, companies and the government I trust. Otherwise, I use Helen Nissenbaum's term obfuscation with fake
Mm-hmm.
data.
So, isn't it true though that when you create a profile on Facebook and when you are on Facebook, that it doesn't matter necessarily what your public persona is, that they sort of have this profile on you anyway? I mean,
Yeah,
talk to me
I
about
get
that.
I get advertising. I do get advertising, and I'm also stalked on my Instagram profile where it's my dog, so I can see that they know this is coming from the same IP address because I don't use my VPN every single time I get online. So they do know my persona, but in my fake person on both Instagram and Facebook, I'm not a serious person. I'm not liking a lot of brands. I do get advertising, but and I actually usually I call them sexually inappropriate. Even, so I'm trying to obfuscate there as well, because I think it's really annoying. You get a lot of advertising, and I could choose to just leave those platforms. Of course, I could, but I also need to understand what I am criticizing as a
Right.
public speaker, and that's why I'm there. And I also actually like to be a warrior and seeing a lot of people on Facebook and Instagram because they're telling a lot about themselves. So you can sit there and have it's fun, interesting sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I do. I get that. I'm the same. um, so let's talk about your where you are today. You founded DataEthics EU. What's the motivation and what's the mission?
Well, after I left the media industry, I worked for the Danish Business Authority for a while, trying to convince them that privacy would become a competitive parameter. It would be something really big in the future. But they didn't want to listen to me at all. They listened to Silicon Valley, Singularity University, exponential growth and stuff. So I left them. And then I co-founded DataEthics EU, which is a non-profit organization trying to make data ethics a competitive advantage. And we called it data ethics because we had a feeling that privacy was becoming a worn out terminology. You know, sometimes words rust, and data ethics is something everybody wants. And I believe it had a lot of success. But of course, you can discuss what it is, and it's also being abused today because it's become so popular. But to me, it is privacy plus. It is more than living up to the existing laws in Europe, but doing something more to actually treat other people's data the way you want your children's data to be treated. So what we do is constantly promoting ethical ways of using data. So if we have a company like Idka or Lego or Unilever who are starting this, or other companies who have data processes where they're trying to be really ethical with data, we promote them. Even though I know it can change, nothing is constant, so it can change, but we dare promoting them. We think that this positive approach is a really good way of changing the world.
That's fantastic because, well, I'm just happy you're doing this because you're right. You know, this word privacy is privacy doesn't sell necessarily, but, but doing things in an ethical, sustainable, healthy, human way, it really does after, the brand, if it's perceived as good and all of that, like Patagonia, or you were talking about IKEA, or some of these companies that are trying to do good things, or tech for good, right? So I think It's fantastic. And so we talk about and then we talk about surveillance capitalism and privacy and all these words. Still, companies, and maybe mostly consumers alike, are having a hard time coming off of this way of collecting data. The ad tech business model is still going strong. Data breaches are still commonplace. What are your thoughts? I mean, The New Competitive Advantage was the book, the Data Ethics, The New Competitive Advantage, and you just touched on competition. What advice are you giving companies so that they can be competitive and ethical?
Of course, things take time. Just think about the green movement, the whole climate movement. It took decades. Back in the 60s, it maybe began in the 60s and 70s. So things take time. And if we only look at it from our own perspective, it feels like it takes a long time. So sometimes I have to kind of fly up in the helicopter and look down and say, okay, historically, this is pretty fast. Facebook, Google invented surveillance capitalism back in 2001. That is 19 years ago. Right. And so let's say we need 10 years for this to change. I think we can change it within 10, 15 years. So I'm confident that we will change it. And being an individual today, it's totally unfair to demand of them to change and to find ethical alternatives. And it's a lot of work. I teach this in schools and for school teachers, how to understand data and how to do digital self-defense, because we have to do something about it. But it's an unfair demand of individuals. We all have a responsibility here. Individuals have a responsibility, of course, but also governments to enforce the law, and companies, at least ethical companies, have a responsibility to provide alternatives. And in the future, we'll see, certifications, just like within the green movement. You're not expected that you understand the difference between organic and non-organic. You get a little certification when you buy it, and then okay, this is okay. That's what we'll see within this as well. We'll get services and products which is labeled, this is privacy friendly. We just need some trustworthy certification schemes.
So maybe data ethics has a badge that we can wear if we're a stamp or something that says, your data ethics, got your data ethics stamp, so you can go and be ethical. And
I mean, that would be a good thing to do, but it's really dangerous, to do it as an organization, because you need independent audits. When Apple says that we are actually really good with your data, they need to let people into the machine room, independent third-party audits. And that's a huge thing to set up to be trustworthy. So I don't think we'll ever be able to do it. We are kind of showcasing examples today, but doing this demands a lot more. But we have, I hope, some of the current organizations who are already working with certifications will do this in the future.
And so, we're touching on this now, but I want to you went to Davos, correct?
Yes.
To the World Economic.
Yes, but I'm not inside the conference. Inside the conference are only 3,000 people, but I'm outside with tens of thousands of others, where there are lots of things going on in kind of a parallel conference all around Davos.
And lots of conversations must have been going on around ethics and how trust has, I saw that one of the titles of the talk was "Trust in Digital Has Eroded, Leaders Must Rebuild It." What was your impression when you were there? The climate, is it improving from an ethical standpoint? Is there more awareness? What were your takeaways?
I think still that the real climate, the climate, the weather, is still what is in the main focus.
Yeah.
But when we talk digital, we see more and more voices being critical towards this surveillance capitalism model. We want another model. We want maybe a regulated capitalism model. And that's what we can hear out of Davos. One of the main speakers whom I really, really adore is Yuval Harari, the historian professor from Israel who did Homo Deus. He is speaking there, and he has some really, really interesting points about this, that we are not going in the right direction right now. I don't know if Europe can change it or who can change it, but at least we are trying out of Europe to change it and regulate big tech. It's very hard.
Yeah, I can see that politically as well as, for the consumer who has trouble getting off of these things. But it's good to know that alternatives do exist and they are functional, and they are, that they will make your life easier. You don't have to, you can do searches without Google. Okay, yeah, it's not there yet, but it's getting there, right?
But I just suggested, yeah, exactly. And I think like right now, Google is refusing to pay a big fine. The EU gave them an antitrust fine, and they're going to court on this next week. And my suggestion is that all Europeans, just for one day, refuse using anything from Google. That could be a really cool experiment. So Google will feel it on their turnover, because we put in money there every time you search on Google. You put in money in there, in the big machine. You can use Startpage, DuckDuckGo, Quant, Ecosia, Givero. There's so many alternatives to Google search.
Yeah.
And something like Startpage is actually based on Google search engine and gives you a kind of neutralized search result. So it's a really good thing to try new search engines and try various ones, because Google is giving you more of what you really want. That's why you feel it's so good.
Yeah, it's we do talk about this a lot, and but you haven't maybe seen all of our past shows, but it's something that needs to be talked about, and it needs to come from different perspectives, I think. So it's good to get your perspective on the whole ethical tech, and also, what comes to mind for me is there's rumors, or there's evidence actually, that big tech is pushing for more regulation, right? The big tech, the biggest culprits of privacy violations and data breaches and all this stuff, they're pushing for stronger regulation. But is it real? Why are they pushing
it? They're
what?
saying it. They go out and say, and are quoted in media, that they want more regulation. But then try and ask their lobbyists, what do you think they're doing? Do you think they're pushing for it? I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. But yeah, maybe Microsoft's CEO wanted. Microsoft is not as bad as some of the others, and of course, maybe they want some kind of regulation, but it depends on what kind of regulation. They would prefer self-regulation, I'm sure. That's what they always wanted. But of course, they understand that if we don't get some kind of regulation within AI, artificial intelligence, then it's going to be really bad for trust. That's why they probably say, well, we want some kind of regulation. And it sounds good.
So it sounds good. It's a media play. It's probably a PR, their PR people are probably.
Yeah. Just wait and see if the US Federal Trade Commission, if they go after the big tech companies with antitrust cases. Let's see if they listen and pay. I don't think so.
Right. So let's talk about the consumer a little bit, and maybe you have some tips out there for some of the tools that exist for privacy or ethically conscious people. What are some of the do's and don'ts? What are some of the tips that you have?
Yeah. Apart from using another search engine, which we talked about, I would be very careful when I choose browsers. I mean, you can use the Firefox browser and Safari browser. Both of them, the newest version, are what you can say private by default. They don't accept third-party trackers. You don't even need to install an ad blocker. So if you have to use Chrome because you are a school student who are forced to using Chrome, then you can install an ad blocker like uBlock Origin. That's one of my main advice. Another advice is to use a VPN. A VPN protects your traffic, but it also helps you manipulate your location. So what I use it for sometimes is when I buy a hotel or a flight, then I'll put on a VPN and pretend I'm in Germany, because then it's cheaper. So I get much cheaper prices. So I also use it to get better pricing, both for my security and pricing. And most apps and websites really, really want your IP address, your location, because it's worth a lot of money. If they get your location over the past 3 months, they can tell almost everything about you. So you should use the VPN and hide your location, I would say. For kids and young people, I usually say that you should be very aware of your professional identity towards your private identity. Most people use Google still, so they will search you on Google. So what do you want them to find? They go to the results, page 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. So you want them to find stuff in your CV, curriculum vitae. So what I do is that everything I do in my own name is professional. So when you Google me, more or less everything which comes up on Google is my professional identity. So do you know what I mean? I don't think you should expose yourself, your private sites, not even in a fake name. If you want to be private, you should use private tools. Instead of Facebook Messenger, you could use the US Signal or Wire or the Russian Telegram. There's some really cool chat apps you can use where you are private.
Or Idka. Idka has a chat too.
Oh, that's really good. I didn't know that. I put that on my list.
That's Idka what most people use Idka for chat, well, collaboration, but
Okay.
chatting is just
Okay.
really great because it's
Yeah, that's
private.
really cool. And instead of using when you do video conferencing,
Yeah,
I would never use Google or Facebook. I would use, for example, whereby.com.
right.
And I wouldn't use Zoom either, which we are on now. I know it's more reliable, but there's a Norwegian one, which I know is really cool with data. That's just through the browser. So there are a lot of really cool privacy-focused tools
Hmm.
giving you an alternative.
And so, can you talk to us a little bit about what exactly the dangers are with being
Yeah.
not private? I mean, why is it
Well,
so most people will say I don't have anything to
yeah.
hide,
That's bullshit. Then you're a really boring person. I mean, if you have nothing to hide, you're a really boring person. From an individual point of view, you have to think of that you want to control your own data. Privacy is the right to control who knows what about you when. So if you're a young woman who want to have a child, then you have a right not to tell that to anybody. If you are for a job interview, you don't have to tell them that you are actually wanting to have a child. This is your right to keep that secret as long as you want, because we want people to get children, right? When you go and vote for somebody, you go into a secret room and vote because you have a right to be secret about it and not to be discriminated. So, as an individual, it's really important also for your job possibilities in the future, for your getting an insurance, a bank loan. There are lots of especially economical things, but also discriminatory things if you are not a mainstream white person. But from a societal perspective, it's even more important because in a democratic society, then those in power, that is, big companies and the governments, they should be transparent. They should be transparent about how they use their power. Whereas individuals, we are the weak part of a society. If we want to be totally transparent, like a reality star, you can choose to be that, but it's very, very hard
Hmm.
to be totally open about everything as a human being. Even if you have a chronic disease, you have to think, is that something I want to be open about the rest of my life? It's very demanding. So it's human to have secrets. I mean, we all peel our noses, but you don't want to do that on television. So So I think privacy is really important. We should just not call it privacy. And when I talk to kids, I say it's a right to decide who knows what about you when, and they totally agree on that.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I was thinking about private groups, support groups online, and do we really want people to see pictures of our pre-existing conditions and all of these things that are being that people, I mean, Facebook or whatever, Facebook is another culprit. They don't We don't want them to necessarily be able to sell that information to insurance companies
No.
to.
And that's why, so if you're a cancer patient, you can go to the Cancer Society and you can find other people with cancer and you can share everything in their little, in their, on their website where you can be private and use another name. You should never do it on Facebook. Facebook is a public media.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should understand it's public, even though they say you can be private there. It's not trustable. I mean, if they were not, if they were more ethical, they would say that their privacy settings, that's social control settings.
Right.
It's not privacy.
Yeah. So I want to this is sort of maybe a little bit off the whatever grain, but I want to spend some time on blockchain because I read some comments about blockchain that you made, specifically some of the pros and cons. And I'm fascinated because not everybody, but a lot of people are saying, well, blockchain is the answer to privacy, or it's the answer to ethics, it's the answer. And I'm kind of like, well, I want to know what you think.
Well, I don't think it's the answer to privacy. it's the answer to getting rid of the middleman. So if you and I want to deal with something, we want to make a contract and I pay you some money and I want to make sure that you're the right person, that's how you can use blockchain. That's how I see it. Whereas privacy wise, I mean, of course you can store things in the blockchain, but I'm not sure it's privacy because those knowing a lot about blockchain say that you can go back and find everybody and find, it's not privacy. I don't think so. I'm not a blockchain expert. I think it's overblown like a lot of other new tech things coming out. I think it's a really cool thing to get rid of the middleman. And that's a big thing as well, a really big thing. So we can trust each other when doing business online. That's what it is about to me.
Right. Transparency. I think one of the things that, like we talk about privacy, one of the things about blockchain that is you can't erase anything. Once it's out there, it's everybody's property pretty much.
Exactly. So that's not privacy.
No. So what about the future? What you sound like you're pretty much optimistic that we can do this ethics thing correctly eventually. I mean, what is the future?
When I see companies, some of the ethical companies wanting to go in this direction, I always recommend them to always think, just treat other people's data the same way you want your own data to be treated, or your kids' data to be treated. And we did a lot of principles on data ethics. So it's always putting human interest at the center. That's the most important thing. So every time you do a data process, you think, okay, is this mainly for my profit, or is it mainly to optimize my system in this municipality or wherever you are? Or do you have humans at the center? One example is, okay, we want to put a chatbot on our website. Is that something people want? Is that helping them? Yes, maybe it's helping them if they want an answer during the night and humans are not sitting at the phones. But you constantly have to put humans at the center. And that's what I see now, more and more realizing that actually what is a danger is the human race. It sounds really big, but we need to define humanity and we need to put that at the center of everything, because otherwise tech will take over, and it can. I mean, do we want to totally optimize everything with AI so it can make decisions on our behalf? Maybe we should set a limit. Maybe we as humans should kind of set a limit. That's what we need to do in the future. And that might mean we have to say no to something. For example, I believe you should say no to predicting anything about children, apart from maybe rare diseases. We should not predict about children whether they have a 70% risk of ending up at unemployment benefits. Because then we put each other into boxes, and we might go that way. So I think we have to discuss, what do we want to use data and artificial intelligence for? Some ways of automated systems will be okay. Some will not. And that's where the big discussion is now. Working with companies and governments, it's much more concrete, right? It's what are you doing in this and this and this, and we discuss it. But as a society, it's really important.
Yeah, I think I think you hit the nail on the head with that, because I think, we talk about, on one other show, we were talking about how in marketing, which happens to be my area of expertise, all of these automated, the chat bot. Oh my God, I play with those chat bots all the time. I swear at them, and then they come back with the automated answer, and I just kind of have fun with it, but I'm also annoyed. But we talked in marketing about how the customer is being treated like a data point, not a human being. So the customer is getting really angry sometimes, with, you don't even know who I am. You looked at my past behavior, fine, but I don't always want to buy the same thing. I might want to look somewhere else, or don't give me a suggestion to buy something I've already got. Give me a suggestion to buy something different, or I mean, that's just an example, but I think that human
it's still
aspect.
pretty dumb. I mean, those chatbots are still pretty dumb. And the whole marketing is still pretty dumb, because you get exactly what you just bought. And it's interesting to see how humans today are making fun of chatbots. But just wait, maybe it's going to be the other way around, Not that long ago, Google actually had a chatbot call a hairdresser to book a hairdressing time. And the hairdresser had no idea it was a chatbot. And they hung up, and they were laughing, everybody. They made fun of this human being, I mean, they cheated her. It's totally unethical to me that all chatbots need to declare from the beginning they have a chat with a human. Hey, I'm a computer. Remember that. I'm not a human being. Have you ever tried that with a chatbot? Did you talk to any chatbots who started saying, I'm a chatbot, I'm a machine?
Actually, yes, once.
Yes.
One time, because I had an inkling, and I actually asked that question, are you a human being? It took me a while to understand that the responses weren't, but it took me like 5 minutes, which is a long time on the phone. And it finally, I guess, because of GDPR or whatever, I don't know what, had to tell me that no, it was a chat.
It has to say that from the very beginning. So when you go online, it has to say it from the very beginning. Otherwise, you can't call it data ethical.
No, yeah,
it's not about cheating humans. So that's just one example. Most people have no idea they talk to chatbots.
That is amazing.
And what happened in this Google case was really interesting, because then a lot of people would say to Google, well, you can't cheat humans like that. And then Google went out and said, okay, we'll always declare it's a machine. Let's see if they continue that.
Yeah, I think that's something that people really need to be aware of, that it's scary. And you remember that movie, Space Odyssey 2000, whatever, there were HAL, remember the HAL, the computer went haywire and sort of, took over like a human being. And it was scary. And that stuff is really kind of maybe happening. So something to think about. So listen, do you have any thoughts that you want to share with the audience? Maybe something about data ethics, where they can find you, any final thoughts?
I just want to say that we have a book out there from 2015, which is still relevant. It's free on our website. And we have data ethics principles, and we have a lot of digital self-defense tools, and it's all free because we give that away. We don't track you. We have an ad-free and a tracking-free newsletter, because we make money on talks. And we're good at getting some funding as well. So we're putting it out there because we really want it out. So it's DataEthics EU. You can find everything there.
Mm-hmm. And that book that you just mentioned was Data Ethics,
the Competitive Advantage. It's
the Competitive Advantage. It's up here on the screen.
Yeah.
Everyone can take a look at that. I found it on your website because there's a link.
Yeah.
Right. To all your books.
Yes.
I did my homework on you, but now I don't remember where I found what.
But go to dataethics.eu/book. It's there for free. As a
Great. PDF. Great. Well, listen, that's all we have time for today. Pernille, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure talking with you. An honor to have you with us.
Same over.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if anyone wants to ask us any questions at all, you can enter comments in our YouTube channel. You can reach us on idka.com. There's contact there. I'm Elizabeth at idka.com, or just find me on Idka. And if you like what you heard today, please share the love, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel, the button at the bottom right of your screen. And we always love to hear from you. So feel free to share your thoughts. Come on to Idka, bring your groups. And thank you so much for joining us, everybody. If you have anything at all, like I said, idka.com contact. And that's about it, everybody. Thank you all for tuning in today. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you on the next Good Tech. Thank you.